One of my favorite things about playing miniature games is having these epic, scenic tables that you play on. And to do that, you need terrain. And I'm going to show you exactly how I built this step by step, including all the failures. I was surfing around the internet a few weeks ago and I came across this epic display board made by a guy called Andrew. And I just thought to myself, I need to try to build this. So I started looking around my house and I found out that I had all the materials I needed at home. So I didn't have to go pick up some expensive gear or material to build this terrain piece. And I just thought I'd share with you exactly step by step how I built this terrain piece and show you how you can build this stuff without having to go and pick up a lot of expensive stuff. Even if you don't have exactly what I use at home, I'm going to show you how you can do this with what you have. So, let's get started. The first thing I did was to tear some piece of cork apart to create sort of a base where I could place my wooden sticks. The pieces of sticks I used is actually some driftwood that my wife picked up a year ago that's just been lying around in our garage. The pieces were originally a lot bigger, so I just cut them down into smaller pieces so they would fit into this board. To stick everything to the base, I'm using a glue gun. It's really not a fancy glue gun, it's something my kids use for their own hobby, so it's quite a cheap one. If you want to get all fancy, you can sand these sticks and you can pin them to the board. I just wanted to do this fairly quickly and to get everything done in a reasonable amount of time. So whenever I had small parts that made it difficult for me to get it to stick to the base, I just used a gripper and took the pieces away. I just keep adding these driftwood pieces to the base until I have something that kind of looks like a rock that's been shot out from the ground. There's really no rule here except for the rule of cool. Whenever you think something looks good, it's good enough. So closer to the bottom, I'm adding these smaller pieces of decorative bark. If you don't have decorative bark at home, you can just use smaller sticks or smaller rocks, whatever you can find at home. You don't have to go out to buy an expensive pack of special bark for this, just use what you have. First side is done and I just want to stabilize this a bit more, so I'm adding a bit more of the glue from the glue gun and yeah, just keep going. Now that I've got my rock foundations done, I'm going to add something that's going to be the ground for the whole base. For this you can use any filler you have, you can use spackle, you can use grout or whatever you have at home. For this I'm using Sculptamold, and the reason is simply because this is what I had at home. Sculptamold is also very lightweight, so if you want something that's not too heavy, I can really recommend you to go out and get this. So when the Sculptamold is mixed, I'm just using my hands to place it wherever I want it to be. When the Sculptamold had dried, I put some PVA glue on and then sprinkled some sand all over the base. To be honest, I think this is one of the steps that I think you can skip. Later in the video you will understand why. Because of the nature with the sticks easily breaking, I wanted to seal them a bit before priming everything. So I just mixed 50-50 water and PVA glue, and then I added a few drops of black ink. You can use ink from pretty much any brand, it really doesn't matter. Once the PVA glue had dried, I just took a cheap graffiti spray and sprayed everything black to get sort of a primer to this. The base color for all of this is actually a regular brown wall paint. But if you don't have that at home, you can use just a regular Mournfang brown from GW or a similar one from Vallejo. It really doesn't matter. I just wanted to have something to work from before I go on to the next step and highlighting and shading everything. So with the base color dried, I felt like there was something missing to the ground. So I started adding some bigger rocks. I also felt that the base texture that I had done with the sanding and the PVA glue in the beginning quite wasn't enough to get the feel that I had in mind. So I covered the whole base in PVA glue again, and then I started adding this coconut fiber. If you don't know what it is, it's from Ikea. You can buy them in a small plastic bag. It works perfectly as ground cover for all types of terrain and base building. And if you can't find this odla at Ikea, or you don't have Ikea in your town, just use regular sand. Just add a bit more than I did. I just didn't get enough texture to get that type of desert feel to it. I didn't want this build to take more time than it had to do, so I wanted to color everything with the airbrush. I started by adding the highlights of Skrag brown. I only added this to the upper parts of every rock formation because I wanted this to be sort of like the highlight where the sun hits and where it's really dried. With the first layer of Skrag brown highlight done, I wanted another punch, so I added more highlights with Ushabti Bone from GW. If you don't own an airbrush, my recommendation is just to dry brush with the same colors on the top of the mountains. And when the highlights are added, I added the shadows, and for this I used Mournfang brown from GW and I added a drop of black ink. With this mix I get a really good punch in the shadows. The house paint was kind of glossy in the tone, so I wanted to cover that again with some mid-tones. So I started off by adding just regular Mournfang brown, not mixed with any other ink. And then I wanted to mix the mid-tones with the highlights back again, so I took some Skrag brown and added it between the Mournfang brown and the previous highlight. As you can see, I also add these colors to the ground, and this is to make everything blend seamlessly together. I don't want anything to stick out as a sore thumb. Before everything was done, I wanted to add a bit of a punch to the cracks in the rocks. So I made my own wash using inks, medium, water and dish soap. I just added this to the bottom and sprinkled it a bit on the ground as well, because I really wanted the bottom part of the rocks to be really dark and the cracks in there to pop. So that's about it, and I'm actually super happy about the result with this one. It took me about 4 hours maybe of total work with all the painting and all the building, and the thing that actually took most time was waiting for stuff to dry. So you might have to do it over a few days. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below, and just have a great day and keep on building.